Away.
Hey, hello, and welcome to this month's Town Hall. At Gift to Africa, we connect donors around the world with African-led grassroots organizations that are creating real change in their own communities. Instead of imposing outside solutions, we focus on elevating local leaders who understand their challenges firsthand. Through our platform, we provide fiscal sponsorship, donor transparency, and a streamlined way for people to support programs in education, health, women's empowerment, climate resilience, and more. Our goal is simple to make it easy, trustworthy, and impactful for anyone to give directly to community driven projects across the continent and to help African organizations grow, scale, and sustain their work long term. Giving Tuesday is an opportunity to shift global generosity towards organizations that are truly rooted in the communities they serve. When you give to African led initiatives through Give to Africa, your support goes directly to the people building the solutions, not to big outside groups where the money doesn't reach people directly. Your donation helps strengthen local capacity, fund long term development, and create meaningful, sustainable impact. On a day dedicated to generosity, supporting African changemakers ensures your contribution empowers dignity, resilience, and community led progress where it's needed most. And now I'm happy to introduce our speaker, Joshua Okpara, a transformational leader, author, and speaker who helps people discover purpose through his nonprofit work and pastoral leadership in Louisville, Texas.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Iona, for that amazing introduction. I am excited to be here and to really be a part of the great work that Gift to Africa is doing.
Awesome. I think I'll take it off from here. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion. It's really very important that we talk about, generosity, and also we talk about how does that, translate in African context. So thank you so much for sharing. And if you don't mind, just telling our audience a little bit about yourself, I think that will be also be helpful. I know Ayuna has introduced you, but just telling our audience a little bit about yourself, I think that'll be helpful.
Awesome, awesome. Well, a little bit about me. I love everything purpose. I'm originally from Lagos, Nigeria. I was born and raised. I don't think I could use the word raised anymore because now I've been in Texas a little bit longer than I've been in Nigeria. But I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. My life has been connected to purpose. Purpose for me began from when my mother actually died 2 weeks before my 8th year birthday, and she died at the age of 38. And so that has really pushed this agenda, which has led me to launch different initiatives, helping people discover their purpose, helping organizations discover their purpose, and that has led to publishing 21 books, leading different organizations, obviously having a pastoral role and having a church in Louisville, Texas, and just serving in different capacities within my community. And so everything is all rooted in that purpose that started at the age of 7. And so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be a part of this panel. I'm excited to learn, to grow, and to also share as we collaborate together.
Awesome. That is really powerful. I know we share similar background. I was born in Nigeria, not in Lagos, but in Nigeria. And I lived, I would say half of my life in South Africa, got married in South Africa, have my kids in South Africa before moving to United States. So we share similar background about Africa, and we're going to be talking, Give to Africa is all about Africa, and we're going to be talking more about how generosity works. So from your own perspective as an African man in diaspora, from your own perspective, how do will you define generosity and how do you understand it evolving over time?
Such a great question. Thank you for that question. Number one, generosity is more than money. it's presence, it's responsibility, it's lifting others. I think it's so much bigger than money. It's not just sharing about resources, but it's more purpose given, purpose driven rather. I think growing up, the way I saw generosity was that picture that you would see of a child begging with a container in his or her hand, and you put a little bit of coin in there, and that's how growing up I thought generosity was. I mean, if you look at the average show or the average television commercial that focuses on generosity, they typically use that same format. They show somebody who's extremely poor, in need, that doesn't have water or whatever the case may be, and they say, "Hey, give this cent, give this dollar for $1 a day." But I think over time, I have seen generosity to become something that is more than money, but it's more about purpose. It's more about creating solutions. It's gone from survival base into a driven a thing. And so I'm glad to be now one that's part of that generosity movement that is not based on helping somebody get a meal, but really help people live purposeful lives in their community. And so that would be my definition of generosity in today's day and time.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Generosity for me also means that not only money, like you said, you really pick the right picture of little kids, with a bow in the hand begging for money, and in the public place. But generosity for me as it has evolved over time. It means being able to give in your own capacity, whether it's your skill, whether it's your talent, whether it's your time. It's also being generous. It's giving. So especially at this point of Thanksgiving here in the United States, generosity is also being thankful, being grateful for what you have, and even for what you don't have, or for what you have, and just looking at your time spent with family. Generosity means being generous and not looking at yourself, but looking outward, and looking at your surrounding, your ecosystem, and looking at how things are shaped in form. So I think that is really what I think is, and just looking at the picture you rightly painted of generosity, it's really, really, right at this point. So thank you so much for sharing. Many African society, link masculinity to strength. We're being brought up, in Africa, that masculinity means strength. That means that as a man, you have to be a provider. You have to provide for your family. You have to live up to the societal expectation, and you have to have strength. You have to be a leader. How does this expectation shape the way African men views generosity? African men doesn't really see it as what you should do. They see that as what women should do. But because to African, society, masculinity is above that. I watched my dad many times. He would give us some money and said, "This is for your school fees. This is for to go to church. Use this one. This is for church." And he barely have anything because he thought, if you give, that's good. I don't need to give. So how does that work in your family, and how do you see that today?
That is such a great question. Number one, I think many men view generosity as transactional than transformational. I think it's natural. Number one, I mean, we feel that pressure to be the source. I mean, think about the average African man. There's no such thing as a African stay-at-home father or stay-at-home man. That is not common. That is not the norm. And so men feel this pressure to be the source, to be the person that takes care of everything, which can be an inspired burden, or it can be a burden to generosity in general. And so I think one of the things that we have to see, even when it comes to masculinity, is in our society as African men, provision is seen as a proof of manhood. So if you cannot provide, you're not considered to be a man. If you cannot meet the needs of your family, you cannot be considered to be a man. And so that sometimes, I think, puts a pressure on generosity, because can it be called generosity if it's not from the heart? right? Can it be called generosity if it's more transactional? And so I think it's put a little bit of a stain, like how you gave the example with your dad, right? Is he giving to you because he's trying to be generous, or is he fulfilling a responsibility in his mind? And so I think sometimes for men, generosity becomes a responsibility. Well, I have to do this rather than I get to do this, rather than I get to be a part of a movement. It becomes more transactional. And I think what needs to happen is it needs to be morphed into more of a transformational thing. That way, one, we can get more men to be involved, but two, we can also get men to not just be involved, but to understand why they do what they do, rather than feeling like they must do it because they are men.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just looking at what you said about my dad and what I shared, I think it's both way for him. It's like, at least I've done this. Next time, okay, we'll see what we can do. So to him, it's more like, this is my duty. This is my responsibility. I'm obliged to do this for my family. And I think when that is done, I've done my own, work. And that is what is the expectation. And also, it's also seen as being generous. They say, no, you have to give to church. You have to do this. This is part of, and if my children give, I also give. So they are giving on my behalf. So they are giving, and that should surface, for what I do. So yes, honestly, thank you for sharing. That really resonates, and that's really, take me back in time. So, do you believe that cultural expectation around masculinity encourage or limit men with that because of the cultural expectation, because this is expected? Do you think that create that limitation when it comes to giving, compassion, community responsibility? Like I really share, I really see my dad, staying at home, or maybe or doing something in the community. He will have us do that, and he would rather, face his tax on. Do you think the culture limits men to be generous?
Honestly, I would say it encourages and limits men to be generous. Let's start with encourage, right? Number one, cultural pride, it pushes men to take care of family. I think that that's something that we cannot just take away. Naturally, as a man, as a father myself, if you were to show me anything or push an initiative that showcases family, because I'm a father, I naturally have this desire, this encouragement to say, I want to give, I want to be a part of this, I want to be a part of this movement. There's a sense of responsibility that motivates men, that motivates mankind in general, to invest in the next generation, like your father with you as a child, and my father with me. Our fathers have this mindset of education. I know African fathers are very big on education, and so there's that cultural push, that sense of responsibility there. But the limiting factor is, in the same regard, that fear of appearing weak discourages vulnerability and compassion. I don't want to be compassionate. I don't want to appear weak. I mean, I don't want to show my feelings. If it's money you need, fine. But don't. Sometimes that also limits generosity, and this pressure as men to have it all together, it keeps men from even asking for help. And I think that also affects even those who need the generosity of others and those who need to be generous. Because for the ones who need the generosity of others, for the men, they're not going to ask for help even though their families need it. And for those who are the men that may have extra to give to others, they may not feel like that's their lane, if you may. Maybe the women handle those kind of things. I'm just here to take care of my family. I need to have it all together. And so I think there's that financial struggle of whether I should be able to, I should feel encouraged to want to give towards a cause, or whether this generosity thing is limiting me. There's that struggle. And I think men have to always find where they are on that scale, on that balance of where am I around this expectations around masculinity? Am I one that would be able to see my masculinity as an opportunity for me to be able to push and give to the next generation, or do I see it as something that limits me because men have not been seen as by society as one who are generous, because generosity has kind of been given a feminine tone to it. And so I think we have to find that balance on how to be both a man and be generous and be encouraged to give, and see that as manliness, rather than something that maybe the woman should do.
This next question is really personal, and if you don't mind sharing, what personal experience shaped your own generosity? Is it family, or because I remember you shared about, some of the work that you're doing as well. So what shaped that? What experience shaped your generosity?
Growing up, I did not grow up with a silver spoon, which is a natural thing that we say in Africa, with somebody who may have grown up with having it all together. I did not have it all together. Growing up, there was a lot of struggle in our family. There was a lot of things that I could not get. I couldn't get toys. And now I'll be honest, in hindsight, back then I was happy. I didn't, it was kind of one of those things that you didn't know was a bad thing. You just thought it was a norm because everybody did not have toys and everybody did not have anything going for them. And so I didn't have toys. I didn't. Christmas was eating rice was the Christmas gift, and most of the times, even in African culture, our Christmas experience, our family experience is really shaped around church. And so most of the gift that I would get would be from church members who may have said, "Hey, here's a little pen here, here's a little this there." And so growing up, I think that limiting factor, hearing my father say, "Oh, we can't get that," and it's not because I don't want to give it to you, it's because we can't afford that. I think hearing that over and over as a child, it triggered some emotions in me to say, I want to live in abundance, not because I want to be rich, to have the fancy car, to have the fancy house, but because I want to be able to live in a place in my mind where I don't feel any limitation. And so I think in a way that personal experience shaped it. I mean, growing up, I went back home. Like I told you, I just came back from Nigeria about 4 or 5 days ago, and many of my friends that were there, I remember I was sharing with my church. The struggle that's there in Africa is very different than here. And I'm not saying that people in America are not struggling, or people all over different parts of the world. Everybody has their own struggle according to their mental capacity. But when you struggle here, I can go to a food bank and get some food. If you struggle here, I can probably go to different organizations that have housing and different allowances. But many times in Africa, if you're not part of a church, many times there's not really much that can happen to you if you're struggling. And so I remember being back home, and there was a family of about three, and the lady was pulling on my shirt while I was passing by, and you could imagine it's hot outside. I mean, you're talking about 90 to 95 degrees, and imagine the wind. It's very humid over there, and I'm walking by the sidewalk, and here's this family. They're on the floor and they're begging, and I'm thinking, okay, they're begging for money, but they were not. The lady was begging for a drink of my water bottle. I think when you see things like that, it changes the reality of what giving is. That somebody is begging to take a sip of water. And they're not begging to go get drugs. They're not begging to go get another meal. They're begging because they simply need water. And I think when you think about generosity from that place, that's what shapes the way I give. Is that I've been privileged to be able to see those needs and see that these are not just people that are on the screen, but these are people that have real needs, and their needs. I'm not saying that it supersedes us, but their needs are for things that we take for granted. Their needs are for things that we may overlook. Their needs are for things that we're like, this does not bother me. And there are people who have less than normal lives. When I say less than normal lives, they don't have that clean air that you and I breathe here. They don't have the ability to have electricity as you and I may have. They don't have the ability to work in the way the people who are disabled, and they don't have a house to be able to go to of people that would take care of them. And so when you see these things, it prompts you to really see the heart of generosity. There was a man that I spoke to a few years ago, and he gave me an advice that really stuck with me. He said, whenever you find yourself down at your last, you have to find a need that's bigger than yours. And I think that's the heart of generosity, is we have to be able to find a need that's bigger than ours. And so for me, I've got to see that there are many people in Africa who have a need that's bigger than ours. They don't have a food bank to go to. They don't have a SNAP benefit. They don't have WIC to go to. They have a need that's bigger than ours, and that has shaped my generosity, even to the different initiatives that I'm part of.
Absolutely. Honestly, that's really, resonate, just sharing your background. For me too, whenever we have a new clothes, growing up, that's gonna be Christmas time. And we look forward to it because that is the only time we'll ever get. And I remember my parents work really hard, to be able to get us. It might not even be new, but might be fairly new. But whenever we have clothing, to add on to what we have, it's gonna be during Christmas. And we look forward to it as young kids, Christmas time. And sometimes that's the time that we're fortunate to eat rice, because other days, local food, and we view rice then as this is expensive food. It's expensive to eat rice at a certain time, and we look forward to Christmas with all our might, with everything, because that is when some new things, get new shoes, get new clothes. So really, looking back, I see a lot of needs like that still happening in our community right now, in Africa, across Africa, and I also see, the need. And really that is one of the reasons why we create Give to Africa, so that we can be able to look back and in our own capacity as diaspora, what can we do to be able to make things a little bit easier? It's just saying the contrast, the different. Yes, people are struggling here as well, but it's not as much, as what we have in Africa. The need, the dynamic, the need, type of need is really different. And, we can do so much with collective strength. We can help, you know, and not looking, not, just concerned with our family alone. There's so many things we can do collectively to help our community, our society in Africa become better, and people can afford at least basic need across board. So that's really helpful to share. And looking right now, Africa is hurting. So many countries, there is war, there's persecution, there's power grabbings, there is famine in lands. It is a moment right now where Africa is hurting. What role do you believe, we as diaspora can play, in healing and restoration across Africa, across our communities? If you go to countries, you hear, oh, there's war, there's this community clashes, there's this religion, there's so many things going on across different community, different countries in Africa. As diaspora, what do you think we can do to be able to help Africa to heal? Because we're like, I'm not in power. I've heard that. People saying, no, I'm not in politics. I don't care about politicians are greedy. But I think we can do our own bit. What do you think we as diaspora can do to really help in healing and restoration?
Great question. A couple of things. Number one, I think as men, as people, we have to serve as bridges, connecting resources, opportunities, and even global networks. I think more bridges are needed. Number one, we need more people that can be able to showcase the real needs in Africa. I think that many times needs are blind. When you can't see the need, when you can't feel like I told you, I went back home, and so it's different being able to touch that person. Then you watch them on the screen, and you can easily change the channel, and you're like, okay, I'll give them next time I feel bad about it. It's different being able to touch the person, to see them, or look in their eyes, and really observe. So I think number one, we need to be able to create bridges that connects resources. There are people who have nothing, and there are those who have excess. We need to find that bridge that connects those with the excess to those who have nothing, and so that way we can be able to create a community that is well balanced. Number two, we need to champion narratives that restore dignity and challenge negative stereotypes, especially even about Africa and the countries in Africa and what we believe even as people. I think we need to be able to champion those narratives. Number three, we want support for sustainable solutions, not just giving money, right? Not just giving backpacks or school supplies, right? We want sustainable solutions. So we're not going to be focused on crisis response. I think many times one of the things I've seen in Africa is we give based on a crisis. So the same thing we do in America, there's a tornado or something of that nature or a hurricane. And then we say, okay, we need to gather our resources and we need to get some food and water and those different things. But I think we need to channel our giving to not be crisis response, but to be more forward thinking, more proactive giving, to be able to establish foundations that communities can build upon. And I think with that, to be more practical, we want to invest in entrepreneurship. We want to invest in education. We want to invest in coaching and mentorship. One of the biggest things that I've seen, especially when it comes to many Africans, is poverty has a way to challenge your mental faculty. There are many people who, because of the way the environment is, they cannot think. There's this story that we talk about crabs in a bucket, and many people, many speakers use that same story, talking about if you put a bunch of crabs in one bucket, and they're there, and you put water in there, they'll be quiet and they'll be comfortable. But when you begin to heat up the water, then what happens is the crabs then begin to pull each other down in an attempt for one person to get to the top, and they keep pulling each other down until eventually all of them dies. And we use that story to symbolize many times minorities and how they pull one another down. But we forget one major factor. It's the environment that created that thinking. The environment caused the crabs to want to pull each other down because they're trying to survive. We need to create an environment where African children are not trying to survive, but they're trying to thrive. I think when we take away that survival mentality, then you allow people to discover their purpose. It's no longer, I need to do this career because I need to make money, but it's I actually want to solve a solution. There are many people right now in Africa who are money driven, not because they're greedy, but because they're simply trying to survive. And so if we be able to bring in entrepreneurship, bring in education, bring in mentorship, bring in different initiatives that can form as a foundation for Africans, what is going to happen is over the next future, we will start to see that there's some Africans that do have the solution for the very problems many other countries in the world are dealing with. There are many people who their creativity has not been unlocked because of the environment. And if we can change and challenge the environment and the stereotypes concerning that environment, we can find out that there's a world hidden treasure in people who have not been allowed the liberty and the privilege to simply think outside of a survival mode.
Hmm. That is really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. That is really powerful. I want at this point to spotlight one of our, community leaders on the ground in Africa. Lamek, I want you to, answer this question. As a frontline, are you ready, Lamek? I want to spotlight your organization for you to talk about, what your organization is doing in Africa. How do you see generosity transforming, life where you serve? You can tell us about your organization and how do you see generosity? Lamek, are you ready? Are you ready to talk?
Yes, indeed, Victoria.
Okay, so
Yeah,
can you share a little bit about your organization in where you are in Africa and how do you see generosity transforming lives where you served?
beautiful, and thanks for spotting us to share our thoughts on today's session. Yeah, so our organization is Ebenezer Community Development, ECOD, in the northern part of Malawi, in a city, Mzuzu. Our mission is to transform communities where none lives in poverty. So basically, we're a social development organization. In terms of generosity, impacting lives, we feel in terms of generosity impacting lives in Africa or in our community, we feel as the presentation was saying that we need to bridge the gap between those who have and those who don't have. we feel generosity can perform a very noble cause in terms of bridging that gap, empowering the communities. We have seen communities being empowered through generosity that comes from different individuals. For example, in our case, we had a case of a family of a lady who is visually blind, but having a very big burden in terms of supporting his family. And when we approached an individual in the US, sent money to us so that we support the family. We improved her housing. We improved her beddings, but also we had to support her with the farm inputs so that food security has to be improved. So we had a case to say generosity played a very big role in ensuring food security, but also adequate housing for a family like this one. So generosity surely can empower, generosity can bridge the gap, but also generosity can make can bring resilience to those that do not have enough. Basically, that's what I can share from the northern part of Malawi.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And last question I have for you is, what are the urgent needs in your community right now? As a community leader, I know you are closer to the problem within Malawi. What are the urgent needs in your community, and how do you think generosity, especially from the diaspora, can make the deepest impact? I know you say, "Oh, we need money," because everyone needs money. But aside money, aside and we've defined generosity as not only money, but there's so many things that generosity means. What do you think? Generosity, or what impact do you think diaspora can make that can make the deepest impact within the Malawi community that you lived?
Yeah, I think the deepest needs that I see in our communities, one is the unsustainability of organizations. Most of the organizations in our communities that are unstable, they cannot implement interventions on their own apart from external support. So that I feel it is a challenge aside the socio-economic problems that communities are facing. So in this regard, I sense generosity can first of all contribute to mindset change that organizations have, leaders in organizations have to change their mindset to tap resources within their communities, but also to look at the diaspora as a platform that can be used for sustainability, whether in knowledge, but also in tapping resources that can make organizations sustainable in our communities, but also in Africa as a whole. That would be my take. When organizations can be self-sustaining, I think we'll be able to reach out to many. We'll be able to contribute to resilience of households and individuals who are in vulnerable situations in our context. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all the way from Malawi. We appreciate that, great insight. I'll go back to you now, Joshua. How do we move from here, from crisis driven giving to consistent purpose driven generosity? Just hearing from the front line, people right back at home, and that what is said by mindset really, and echo back to what I've been hearing a lot from frontline leaders. Like since USAID, stopped giving aid, to Africa, the mindset of the leaders has always been, oh, before now has always been aid. We're going to get money. We're going to get the money. But now that there's no aid coming, there's no savior coming anywhere. The mindset now is now where the issue is now. They're not kind of like, what do I do? How do I sustain my program? How do I sustain the community? How do we sustain? Now the mindset is like, oh, now we have to die. We have to, go down the drain. How do we manage that? How do you think we can go from crisis driven to now purposely driven generosity across Africa, especially post USAID?
That is a very powerful question. And when you were asking the question, the number one thing that came to my mind is simply purpose. People will never give provision where there is no vision. People need vision. I think one of the critical things that we have to even understand, even when it comes to Africans in general that need aid, is you have to find a solution and solve that solution, and money will come to that solution. I've seen this to be true in my life. I've seen it to be true in the organizations that I've been privileged to run. That many times we're searching for money, but money is only attracted to solutions. And so many times it's that empowerment that's necessary. It's being able to empower the African youth, the African parents, the African grandparent, the African auntie or cousin to be able to say, okay, now that you are in crisis, if anybody is in crisis, you have an opportunity, you have an unlimited potential to be able to find what are the needs of those who have excess. That's number one. What are the needs of those in excess? Whether you are not in proximity to them, what are the needs of those in excess? And how can you meet those needs so you can create a value proposition that would now bring in money, not in the form of, of feeling like, oh, well, I just want to help you because you need help, but really in the form of I'm giving you a trade in for what you need. So, for example, if somebody would have stopped giving me random, if somebody would have said, okay, you know what, I don't want to give you money anymore because I don't want to help you anymore. How do we get the donor to not see what they are doing as help, but to see it as I'm giving towards something that I need? People are naturally self-centered. It's a natural mechanism. Somebody can tell you I don't have any money, but they'll spend $300 on a steakhouse. They do that because somewhere in that steakhouse, it may be the same exact meat as another place, but the value proposition causes them to put money out of their bank, out of their card, out of their wallet to say, give me this. People will spend thousands of dollars to buy a brand name bag. Why? Because it makes them feel good. There's a value there for them. It aligns with their values of how they want to be seen, how they want to be perceived by others. I think Africa has a gem, and that gem is we have to be able to create solutions to the world, that when the world sees the solutions, the world does not come to Africa and say, hey, we want to give you a donation, but rather you start getting paid for the very value that you're offering. And so I think we need to be able to train people to be able to offer value rather than need help. If you teach somebody to always need help, they will always go to people seeking of what they can get. But if we can train Africa on realizing what they can give, then what we need when it comes to resources will become a natural response to who we already are.
Absolutely. That is really good. And I remember a saying that said that we need to teach people how to fish instead of just giving them to fish. Because if you give them fish, they're gonna come back again and again and again. But if you show them how to fish, they would definitely know how to do that themselves. So they wouldn't have to ask you to do it for them next time. So the mindset, the training, it's really important, and also to help to bring out the solution factor rather than the aid factor. It's really key in helping Africa. As a spiritual leader, you are a pastor. How does your faith come into this? How does Christianity, faith, influence giving? How does that all sum up together?
That is a very great question. As a Christian, as someone who believes in the Lord Jesus Christ as my Lord and personal Savior, I'm really led by this one verse that says we love Him because He first loved us. The Scripture says that while we were yet in our sin, Christ died for us. In other words, I had nothing to give to God before He gave to me. So the very foundation of even giving is seen in scripture. That before we had anything to offer to God, He gave. He loved us so much that He gave us His Son so that we will not perish but have everlasting life. For me, giving is an extension of our belief. That as a part of a believer, as a Christian that believes in Jesus, that believes in God, an extension of that, one of the ways that we see that you are a believer is through your giving. As a matter of fact, you can't take my word for it. Jesus said, when I was in jail, did you come and visit me? He said, when I was sick, did you give me something? When I was homeless, when I was poor? And they asked him, Lord, when did we see you that way? We never saw you. He said, as long as you did not care for the least of this, you didn't do it to me. And so I really believe that we have to recognize that a part of Christianity is found and showcased in our giving. Faith is what inspires work. Bible says that we cannot have faith and then have no work. Neither can we have all work and have no faith. It says faith without work is dead. In other words, one of the ways I get to see your faith is through that work. And so I think we have to bridge the gap of the faith with the work of giving together. That is what makes Christianity for me. And so my giving is based on my faith. If I had no faith, I would do no work. And my giving is based on my belief system that God gave to me when I had nothing. And so I have to be an extension of God's arms and God's legs to be able to meet the needs of others. People may never hear about Jesus, but if they hear about your giving, then they will want to hear about the Jesus that inspired you to give.
That is really powerful. Thank you for sharing. The last question I have for you is, what message do you have for African about giving, about leadership, and responsibility to the continent? What is your message to your final word to African right now about giving, leadership, and responsibility to the continent?
Great question. I have a master's in strategic leadership. Africa does not need donors, it needs builders. We need people that can come together, not just to donate, but to build. I believe it is the bricks of each individual, each organization that can literally shape Africa, its beauty, its rich culture, its taste in food and music. All of these different things need builders that can come alongside it and partner with the vision. Leadership is proven by what we lift, not what we control. We don't want ownership. We want people who can steward, who can see the resources that are there and said, I want to steward this to be able to give it back to the community. And so my message will be number one, we have untapped potential. We have untapped ability. We have untapped rigor, strength on the inside of us as Africans. We have solutions to offer. We are not the paupers of the world. We are not the people who are just aimless and lifeless. We have what it takes to be able to change not just Africa, but to change the world. But we have to first believe that in our mind. And for the donor that's listening, is being able to allow them to recognize that you have an opportunity, just like anybody else, to go see and touch the very people that you're giving to. Connect with people that are doing the work. Connect with people that are on ground. Because when you're on ground, then lives are being touched, lives are being affected. We have to be able to bridge those gaps so Africa can be built again. It's already been built. It's not in ground zero, but if we can come together, collaborate together, staying away from that mindset of being a donor, but to being a builder, then my brick, your brick, our brick together can build a foundation that leaves a lasting impact for decades to come.
Thank you so much. That is powerful. We've really enjoyed our conversation with you. Thank you so much for sharing. That is really good. Thank you for your time with us, Joshua Para. We appreciate your time. I know Lemike have shared about his community, but just one more community that I just want to tell us about. their message to the world and the community they serve and the power of giving. So if just for 1 minute we can have one more community share. I see one more community here. They wanted to share, about their community and about the power of giving. That will be good. So is there any other community that I really want to share? Otherwise, I'm gonna call it out for today. Okay, I think thank you so much again for your time. We appreciate you coming on our monthly town hall, where we have the diaspora talking about giving to Africa. And also, like I said, giving to Africa is not about only money, but about resources, and that is what we stand for at Give to Africa. It's Giving Tuesday. We have Giving Tuesday campaign ongoing and on our website. Thank you for all you that tune in from different part of the world to join us to listen, and even those that will be watching the rebroadcast of this video. Thank you so much all, and we thank you for your time and for your impactful, powerful, presentation today. Joshua, we appreciate you. Thank you so very much. Thank you all. Iona, thank you for putting this together. Thank you for everything. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Stay blessed and take care all. Bye.